Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Rewind podcast. I'm your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and as always, I'm joined by my friend Mike.
Hey!
So today, we're diving back into the world of A Song of Ice and Fire with House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 1, which is titled...
A Son for a Son. Harkening back to the first season where an eye for an eye...
An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, a son for a son. Classic saying. Before we get into the episode, though, I'm going to give out the typical reminders. If you want to get in contact with the show, you can send us an email, which is fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, which is @fantasyrewindpod. Or X every now and then as well, which is @fantasyrewind. All right, without any farther delay, Mike, let's dive into the rewind.
Fantasy Rewind. Alright, Dylan. So this episode picks up just a few days, it seems like, after the last season wrapped up. And so we have Rhaenyra's son, who I don't remember... Lucerys died, which still haunts me. But we have her finding out about it, and everything sort of erupts, and we really have the beginning of this conflict. I mean, it really started, at the end of last season, but, that was kind of they were just trying to gather people, weren't even sure if they were going to actually fight or not, but, with the death of Lucerys, and this episode, it is on.
Yeah,
really
totally on. I think that the first thing to talk about with this episode is the scene that it opens up with Rhaenyra basically out looking for Luke, as she calls him, and basically knowing he's dead, but needing for her own closure to see it for herself. Yeah. What did you make of all of that?
I mean, I'm glad she had that, because I couldn't imagine they never had that scene. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it would have just been this scene really takes her from being kind of on the edge of having this conflict and stuff to by the end of this episode saying she wants Aegon. Right?
She wants Aemon. She wants Aemon.
Aemon. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Sorry. I just need to not say names because they're all so similar. But I think it was really good because it really fueled her motivation and solidified this conflict. And so I really appreciated that it was included. As for me, I'd rather just forget the whole thing happened, but to each their own. And what about you? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I thought same deal. I think that the scene was essential to show Rhaenyra going from being on the brink of war to going full on, it's time to attack. And I think that contrasting her with her needing the time to process what's going on, to see it for herself, to get that closure before she's ready to take action, really separates her from what we saw with Daemon, who, before Rhaenyra even got back, he was approaching everyone that would listen, saying, let's go, attack, attack, attack. And basically being told, calm down, you're not the king. We're waiting for our queen to tell us what to do here.
Correct. And he does take matters into his own hands anyway.
He does.
Going back to King's Landing and disguise, even though it's really just the hood.
Yeah, it was a very poor disguise, but I think it was more so just hiding his face. So hiding his hair, hiding his face, because as we know, Targaryens have very distinctive hair.
Yes, they do. What did you think of him kind of making that move and doing that? And I'm sure that's probably similar to what happened in the books. I have no clue.
So basically what I made of that was when Rhaenyra came back and she looked furious, rightfully so, and sad and just torn up, and her statement of I want Aemon or bring me Aemon, I forget the exact verbiage, but one of those two. And to me, that was her letting Daemon off the leash. And that was her unofficially giving her blessing for retaliation to occur. And so it's been a while since I've read A World, Vice, and Fire, or Fire and Blood, rather, which is what this show is based upon. But when this scene happens here, it is pretty much what goes down in the books with a little alteration, which is actually something I want to bring up, but I'll bring that up to you towards the end of the podcast here. But yeah, like what goes down is Daemon goes and he makes a little bribe and gets this city watchman who isn't quite so happy with the Hightowers, and also introduces him to a rat catcher, which this duo is affectionately known as Blood and Cheese, because cheese for the rat catcher and blood for the big bruiser dude.
Yeah, do we just kind of want to follow their adventure, or sort of?
Yeah, I think following their adventure
kind of hits everything.
Yeah, it hits everything else. We can kind of touch on everything else as we go.
Yeah. So, we have King Aegon II, who is the king of King's Landing. And I gotta say, like, he is definitely stupid. Not stupid. Naive, I guess would be the right word. Like, he does not have a clue.
No.
Kind of how to be a king or what's going on. And Otto Hightower, his granddaddy, look at that, I remember his name, is the one that is the hand, and he's sort of pulling the strings here, kind of, as best he can, I guess.
As best he can, yeah.
And his mom is too, and they're kind of undermining each other at certain points. Well, Otto is undermining her. Like, it's a bit of a mess. It's a bit of a mess. And King Aegon is having his son, Jaehaerys, come to, like, a small council meetings. Like, it's, in my opinion, like, I'm watching this and I'm just like, this guy is acting like he's not at war.
Right.
And, like, his brother didn't just kill his cousin.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, like...
his nephew.
WTF.
Yeah.
Man.
No, I think that this just goes to show that Aegon is not fit to be king. Because we see him... we saw him in season 1 going from being, like, a drunkard playboy to basically being forced to be king by his mom and grandfather. And we saw him kind of grow into the kingship a little bit, but by this point, you're seeing him kind of falling back into his old habits here. Like, we see him basically playing games with his son at the small council meeting, letting him ride his Master of Coin, which is a Lannister, as a horse, but before getting stopped and told that we need to talk about serious things here. And then we see him again later on in the episode, basically just, like, brooding over being called Aegon the Magnanimous, and be like, what does that even mean? I'm just getting drunk with my friends and coming up with new nicknames for myself, which involve dragon and appendages between your legs and everything like that. So we just see him being a kid, a person that we don't want as a king.
Correct. But I mean, also too, he's like a teenager.
Yeah, he's totally
so, like,
teenager.
It kind of, and he had to marry his sister. Like, it's all weird.
And have kids with her too. But yeah.
I do want to talk about Lars Strong, right? He's the Master of Whispers. Mm-hmm. He's the one who's currently controlling Harrenhal. And he is going to be interesting. Because he's already making some moves. You know, he tells Alicent, like, I've killed some of your staff that were untrustworthy. Like,
yeah. I put in my own people.
Yeah, my people.
Yeah.
And who are they loyal to? You or him? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and you kind of see her sort of
getting weirded
think about
out.
that, and and sort of she dismisses her, like, people, her handmaids, like, while she's taking a bath, even though they usually are the ones who would probably bathe.
Yeah.
Really weird. And to top that all off, he then starts talking to King Aegon and is like, hey, your grandpappy there, Lord Hightower, Yeah, he's probably due to retire, right? You should probably get someone a little bit better.
Right. Basically telling him, you didn't choose him as your hand. He was your father's hand. Why don't you pick the hand that you want? Someone that's loyal to you, not somebody who's loyal to a corpse in the ground. And I think, he's obviously angling for himself in this because that's what this dude has been about from day one. He is basically the Peter Baelish of this show, as opposed to, more of the Master of Whispers that we saw there. Like, this guy definitely has his own agenda he's going for.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that kind of, it makes me think of Littlefinger back in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's Peter Baelish.
Sorry. Really, it makes me think of him. So, yes, I'm glad we were on the same page there, just I forgot his name. Theme of this entire series. Anyway, I will say this about King Aegon, though. While he is a complete and utter
fool,
poophead, he does, and he does want to do, it does seem like he does want to do some
right. He wants to be a good
nice.
king.
He's not Joffrey.
Right.
He is not Joffrey.
Yeah.
At least not all the time.
Right, because, going back to that, we see him hearing out the small folk with their claims towards him, and him wanting to side with the small folk and pay them for their sheep that they're taking to feed to the dragons, paying them for their work and everything, a fair wage and ahead of time. And he's wanting to do these things. And every time he tries, the hand, Otto Hightower, steps in and it's like, we're not doing that. We can't do that. Here's why. Or doesn't even give him a reason, just tells him no. And we see Aegon listen to him for the guy who's asking to be compensated for his sheep or have his sheep returned to him. But then we also see Aegon say, well, I'm just going to do what I want. You can't stop me. I'm king. When he says he's going to pay the craftsmen for their work ahead of time. That way they stay happy and keep producing weapons for the crown, even though his grandfather did not want him to do this.
And because the thing is, too, and he's probably unaware of it, King's Landing is sort of being starved a little bit.
There's a blockade around King's Landing.
Yeah. So that's going to impact a lot of things down the line. And you making decisions like this where you're paying these craftsmen ahead of time, you may need that coin somewhere else.
Right, and will they be able to get the material to make this stuff if they are blockaded? And all these other factors go into it. But he's not doing this because he, is ill-intentioned or anything. He just doesn't know what to do. He's a fool, and he's trying to be a king of the people. Yeah. But this does lead us back to our wandering duo of Blood and Cheese making their way through the castle here. So if you want to pick that up, Mike.
Who had seen, King Aegon drinking with his buddies, like you said, making those comments. Sneaking around, they find Helena, who had actually prophesized this, correct? She had said
the rats in the walls or something.
Rats in the walls, and I think it was referring to him being the rat catcher, right? And Blood and Cheese.
Yeah.
Maybe. Do you think so or no?
Maybe. It could be. I'm not sure exactly because there are actual rats in the walls as well.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so they're kind of sneaking around through these rat-infested tunnels. And they find Queen Helena.
Oh, before that, unguarded. Though, they're looking for Aemon Targaryen, who is sitting around with the captain of the Kingsguard, and I forget his name off the top of my head here, but sitting around with him and...
Sir Criston Cole?
Yeah, Sir Criston Cole.
Who's also banging his mama.
Yes. He doesn't know that, I hope at least. But they're talking about an attack that might have to happen. And they get interrupted by Otto Hightower, who's like, yeah, you guys can't be planning separate from the crown here. Aemon, you're not even part of the small council. Get, little young pup. And Cole, go back to your post. Which, he goes back to his post all right.
Yeah, he does. He does. Yes, thank you. But Blood and Cheese find Queen Helena, which is King Aegon's wife / his sister. And they cut off Jaehaerys's head while he sleeps.
Well, so there's a little bit more to it than that. And so I'm not going to go into graphic detail or anything like that, but...
You can explain this away, because that's as much as I feel.
Sure. Like, in the show here, in the episode, they ask Helena which one is the boy. And she's like, I'm not going to tell you which one the boy is. And then they're like, well, if you don't tell us, we're going to kill both of them and you. And so then she tells them which one is the boy. And the whole reason for this is, again, going back to the title of the episode, Son for a Son. Because earlier in the episode, we see Daemon explaining to Blood and Cheese to bring them Prince Aemon, who is the person that killed Lucerys. And they're like, well, what do we do if we can't find him? And then it cuts away. So we don't ever see Daemon say this, but basically he said to kill one of Aegon's sons, or son for a son was what they wanted here. So by them targeting the male heir of the throne here, they're effectively going after Aegon's line, and his successor is now dead. Where this differs a little bit from the books is in the books it's worse. And of course it is. It's George R.R. Martin. He's not a grimdark fantasy writer, but he can get nasty sometimes. What happens in the book is they stumble upon Helena again, right? And except Aegon has 2 sons in the book. And as well as a daughter. And they have the 2 sons and are like, which one is older? Which one, which one's the heir, basically. Because I can't remember exactly, but I think that they are twins. I'm not positive, though. And so they ask the mom to identify the older son. She is given the choice of which one of the 2 sons is going to die. And so she has to name one. She refuses. They say, same thing, basically, pick one or they all die, including the daughter. And so she picks one of the sons to die. And they say to that son, you hear that? Your mom wants you dead. And they kill the other one. And so it's a little bit more messed up than what happened in the show here. But same kind of flavor of horrific event that happens here.
I thought you were going to add in something else, like they raped her or something.
No.
Okay.
No.
Good. I was just waiting for like the extra layer of just awfulness on top of it.
To me, the awful layer is you first of all have to choose which one of your kids is going to die. You don't want to make that choice. You're forced to, and then they kill the other one. And you have to live with the shame knowing you told these people to kill your son who's alive the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And this kind of drives her mad. And in the show here, we do see Helena escape with her daughter. And she runs to her mother's room, where she interrupts her mom having relations with Sir Criston Cole, and just says the line, "They killed the boy." Which brings me to my one complaint about this episode here, is I feel like the acting wasn't the greatest. And I think part of that had to do with especially that last line of "they killed the boy," just like being very dismissive almost of what happened here.
Yeah, I would agree. That delivery was not hysterical. Yeah. It was not anything. It was just very cut and dry, like they killed the boy.
And I guess she's supposed to be aloof and everything, but still.
Yeah, that was a little too much. It should have been at least like maybe in her eyes you could see like that, like the fear and just like the pain, but like it really felt like nothing.
Yeah, like I feel like she should have been hysterical. She should have shown way more emotion than what happened here with that. But it also does bring me to an overall observation that I've made so far with House of the Dragon season 2 now, especially, but that did go through season 1 as well. And I feel like HBO Max, whatever you want to say, is producing the show. They're making a concerted effort to not be as graphic as they were in Game of Thrones.
At the beginning.
Towards the beginning of it. Like, there is way less nudity, there's way less swearing, and there is way less blood and gore, at least so far. And I think all of these things are being done with purpose. And I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's something that they kind of listened to some of the feedback from Game of Thrones, the show. And while everyone loved that show, obviously it was a phenomenon, and it was phenomenal. A big consensus was that they could tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, and they've done that.
They have.
One last thing I do want to add from the episode we didn't really talk about was that Helena spent some time sort of mourning her mom, right? Her husband,
Allison,
lighting the candles. Allison. Sorry. Yes, Allison, mourning. Her husband, her late husband, her mother, and King Lucerys, who died, right? And so it does show that she still has that connection to Rhaenyra.
Right, and we don't want to forget that Rhaenyra and Allison were childhood friends.
Correct.
And
correct.
As hard as...
Before Otto Hightower messed it all up.
Yes, right. As hard as this all was for Rhaenyra and Alicent, and they're no longer friends, like, they still, you can at least tell there's a thread that kind of still kind of connects them, even though last season we saw Alicent try to kill one of Rhaenyra's children and end up stabbing Rhaenyra herself. But there's still, like, that underlying connection that, again, they're trying to establish and make it purposeful that these characters are connected.
Overall, I enjoyed the episode. Children killing aside.
Yeah, you say that reluctantly.
Which I'm never a fan of. I think that it has really set the tone for this season, and we're going to have a lot of back and forth. Do you know how many seasons they have planned for this?
3. I think 3.
Okay, because, like, there's a certain point that I'm like, I don't want them to drag this out.
I completely agree. If they try to turn this into, like, a 5-6 or 6 season show, they just don't have the material for that without vastly altering the histories of it all. And I think there's nothing wrong with a shorter, like, quality season, as long as it's all told properly and all done well. I'm cool with only a couple seasons of the show.
Yeah, agreed.
But yeah, I agree with you too. Like, all in all, I thought that this episode was done fairly well. I do wish that they had a little bit more sticking to the book for the blood and cheese portion, just because I feel like that is so much better than the toned down version that we got here on the screen. But I do understand it. Again, it's whatever. But I also do think, and I know this, that these are just the opening blows, and that stuff's going to get crazy. It's going to ramp up from here, as I'm sure you can imagine.
I'm sure I can imagine.
All right, but that's going to do it for us for this week for the Fantasy Rewind podcast here. So we are going to be covering the rest of House of the Dragon here, and maybe one or two other things sprinkled in throughout the rest of June and July here, but we'll see. All right, Mike, with all that being said, it's going to be Two Nerds signing off. See ya.
Bye.